The real big drama that's been going on, the one that everybody's talking about, is the Young Turks against Jimmy Dore. And in it, we see the real nature of liberalism. Cenk Uygur has always posed himself as against the establishment, and we too criticized Obama when time came, which they didn't really do to any significant degree. It's like saying you'll criticize someone by saying that they didn't go far enough to do something. In other words, the continuing system of, not getting the social democratic reforms that people want that would probably save the United States political and social system. A failure to criticize Obama's wars and continuing to go on with them without question. And we can see that continues to this day under Joe Biden. And for the longest time, a lot of people really believed it. They really believed that the Young Turks were somehow anti-establishment. Okay, you don't get on MSNBC, as you once did, when you're against the mainstream. I mean, MSNBC is literally the mainstream news. I don't even know how you could even think that that would be otherwise. Even when they, for a brief time, had that deal through, it was through Al Jazeera or something, bought Al Jazeera or something, and they were on television, and that deal eventually came to an end. You don't get on there because you're anti-establishment. You get on there because you are the establishment. You might be on the fringes of the establishment, but you're still there. Anyone with even a modicum of intelligence can see how much Cenk Uygur has changed since he became a part of the Democratic Party. That's how the system works. You don't change the system changes you. And this has been true for centuries. At least in the United States, this has been true for centuries. If you don't know that by now, it is willful ignorance on your part. And everything Jimmy Dore has been criticizing Cenk and the Young Turks for is absolutely correct. You don't change the system changes you. How people could not have seen this coming was utterly unbelievable to me. That's the point about liberals. They're not actually against the system. They actively seek to sustain it by making small reforms to make people happier. And this is one of the things that drives us as Marxists nuts. Listening to conservatives say liberals and communists are the same thing. No, we're not. We want the system destroyed and replaced with an entire new system. Liberals want the same one in, but with a nice, happy face on it. Something that can make you feel good and want to support it because it's giving you some of the benefits. Of course, that being largely the spoils of imperialism, the wealth and values stolen from the third world. And with that, liberalism shows its real face. This was always going to happen and could not have happened any other way. Cenk Uygur and the Young Turks turning around now and slandering anybody who calls them out on their selling out is perfectly predictable. Anna Kasparian threatening to slander anyone who dares say anything against her bullshit hypocritical positions. Is perfectly predictable. Everyone had to know this was coming. Because that's the whole point. You don't change the system changes you. It is all about maintaining the wealth and privileged position that many Americans do have. Like the wealthy elite maintain the system. Even the middle class do whatever they can, like the Young Turks, to maintain that system. And when it comes time to do those reforms, they don't want to do them. And they'll do whatever it is that the Democrat Party tells them to do. How many times has AOC gone back on what she said? Because the party wanted her to. How many times Ilhan Omar, so great in defending Palestinians, now referring to Palestinians as terrorists and referring to Israelis as victims? Who could have possibly seen that coming? Of course, the answer to that, anyone who has bothered to pay attention. And I could go on, but you could just read Rosa Luxemburg's Reform or Revolution. You could read Lenin on the Second International, Revolution versus Social Democracy. They're free. Anybody can go to the Marxist Internet Archive and go read them for free. But that's the point. These middle-class ideologies that seek to preserve everything the way it is, without proposing any radical change. One of those is the entire, we need a government that's for working families. What does that even mean? It's a vague slogan that doesn't, it doesn't really mean anything. It has no substance to it. And when pressed for that substance, a government that supports working families, that gives benefits to families, daycare, healthcare, education, so social democracy. And that's the point. And I think that's the point of a lot of this reformist kind of ideology. Because that's all it is reform. The reason I say it's reform is because the criteria which constitutes where things are supposed to go are literally at the level of social democracy and nothing beyond that. Any people who use this phrase, the government must do what's right for its people, without defining what that is, and then turning around and saying the government should support working families, is really only advocating social democracy. It's not creating revolution. It's not supporting revolutionary change. If it was, it'd be saying tear the system down and replace it with a new one. The hammer and sickle should replace the eagle and the stars and stripes. But the people who propound that won't say that. And the reason they won't say that is because it's unpopular. And the reason that it's unpopular is because Americans don't want it. And that's kind of the point. The American people don't want revolution. They need to do it. They should do it. And to a large degree, they have an obligation to do it. But they're not going to. I mean, I know everybody says, "Oh, yeah, well, we're all supporting like that." You mean your little internet circle. The average everyday American, whether they be even homeless, working class, middle class, they don't want a revolution. They don't want a whole new system. They want the same one that exists with more benefits. Now, I know you can find pockets of the lumpen that really do want revolution, and you're more likely to find them there than anywhere else. I'm not saying they don't exist. But that's the point. Americans don't want revolution. They want those nice, soft, democratic reforms. They want a happy face on capitalism. They want to cut into what Jeff Bezos takes from the third world and keep more of it for themselves. That's what they really want. They want Western Europe, imperialist powers that pillage and give a bigger share to the lower sections of their class society. And this manifestation of it in the Young Turks is not surprising. I was saying it 10 years ago. Finbull was saying a long time ago. A lot of Marxists were saying a long time ago. The Young Turks are not anything radical. They're just liberals. They often turn a blind eye to when the Democratic Party does something unethical or illegal, like, wars. And they always talk in condemnation of Bush's wars, Afghanistan, Iraq. Well, not so much Afghanistan because, our troops didn't do nothing. But very much Iraq. But then turned around and supported Libya, Syria, and they're supporting hostilities against Iran, Venezuela, the DPRK, everybody's favorite whipping boy. You don't get it. The system doesn't change. You change. You think Cenk Uyghur's the first one? There's been a million people before him that did the exact same thing. And that's the point here. That is why I believe in third worldism. Marxism, Leninism, Maoism, third worldism. Because the American people don't want to give up their privileged position within the global order. And coming along with some nice democratic reform talking points, or, you know, nice little phrases. Support working families. Well, we're not here to support working families. That's a part of supporting everyone that is for revolution. That's what we argue. Even Bob Avakian can get this right. Revolution, nothing less. Well, these people aren't arguing for revolution, nothing less. They're asking for a government to do what's right for its people. That way you can change the definition of socialism to be extremely vague, so you can, shoehorn China into that definition and just ignore all of the, frankly, imperialist actions it takes all across the world. And that video detailing that is coming up. And that's the point. They're trying to rebrand Marxism as social democracy because they know revolution isn't coming. They know it's not going to happen in the U.S. If anything, there's going to be a race war before that. The dying out old conservatives are completely dependent upon QAnon conspiracy theories. It's not so much even educating people about Marxism anymore. I mean, every learning resource there is available. They just don't want to hear it. It's not even just about educating them Marxism anymore. You don't have to get them out of the QAnon cult in order to get them to even read anything. And that plays into the very long-standing part of American history where America always sees itself as a victim. It was a victim of the king. They couldn't force their religion on England, so they left England. I mean, that's basically what it is. And then went to the quote-unquote New World, then forced it on everybody else and slaughtered off everybody who didn't want to support it. And then built up this thing of, oh, we're such victims, no taxation without representation. In real life, it was nothing more than the rich elite of the United States not wanting to pay taxes to the king. But again, it posits the United States as some kind of victim. We have to stop the scourge of the savages, the people whose land you're stealing. Again, as victims. The invading hordes of Mexicans as we're stealing their land. Again, posing itself as victims. We have to stop the evil Nazis that we were just doing business with and supporting financially, because we're victims. We have to stop the Soviet Union from being able to give people health care and all the scary stuff that they were saying that never happened. We have to stop third world countries from letting us exploit them by preventing them from going into revolution, because the spread of communism means we're victims. Go on to radical Islam. The U.S. always has to paint itself as a victim. It can't ever really admit what it is. It's the perpetrator. That's one of the things that leads America and Israel to have such a good relationship. They're both tyrannical murderers that position themselves as victims. When they're not, they're the perpetrators. This is all a part about that Americanism. And social democratic reforms ain't going to do shit. Say we get that. Support at working families. The Democrats come out with a social democratic type platform where you got what we used to have in Canada called baby bonuses, subsidized daycare, all that supporting working families. Now what? Your slogan's been fulfilled. What's your position now? You spend all this time building up a movement for social democratic forms, and you get them. Guess what? It's over. And then what? You're going to radicalize them even further? I've heard stupid things like that out of people for more than 10 years. Oh, we're going to work people up to get reforms, and then we're going to do more reforms and more reforms until we're socialist. That's literally not how that works. And you know that's not how it works. But you say it because you know revolution ain't coming. People aren't willing to pick up guns and overthrow the government. That's just true. There's no desire by Americans to do that. At least not in a leftist sense. Maybe to some degree, something that we've seen with the Capitol riot. Maybe they would. Maybe. But that's kind of why third worldists propound revolution in the third world, resistance in the first world. Because there ain't going to be any revolution in the first world. It's not going to happen. The American people don't want it. You can't make them do it. The people and the people alone are the motive force in the making of world history. And no amount of trying to push them to do it, or no amount of diluting them with social democratic reforms is going to make that happen. And that's a truth that people really need to get through their heads. Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.